Well, hello everybody. Grandpa Bob here. Start looking forward to another interesting conversation. Hope lots of folks show up so we can really get some feedback. Um, it's been cold here. It's been real cold. I don't know what it's like in your area, but it has really been cold. It's just started to warm up a little bit. We're really looking forward to some warmer weather coming up. Luckily, we haven't gotten much snow, but it has been cold. So, um, okay, there's Ashley. Hey, Ashley, I just got all tucked up into bed. Good for you. You have to get in bed and get ready to go to sleep before you even turn this on. God bless you. God bless you. So, what's the weather like in England? Uh, like I was saying earlier, it has really been cold here. So I can't imagine what it's been like over there. Um, Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight, and I proposed it as a topic earlier, was um, just exactly what is mental health? How do you define mental health? Um, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, a lot of different criteria that you can use to try to measure mental health. It's really, in some ways, it's kind of a subjective thing. There's not a whole lot of real, um, hey, Just, how you doing? Not a whole lot of real objective criteria. Um, so let me start out by explaining to you that there are two different types of mental conditions, I guess you could say. There's there are mood disorders like depression and anxiety, and then there are, let's see, I've forgotten what the right word for it is, but there are thought disorders. That's right. So someone who has schizophrenia, say, uh, and they've really kind of lost touch with reality, that's considered a thought disorder. So thought disorders, mood disorders, those are the more serious types of illnesses. And then you can drop down below that level to what they call mood disorders. Okay, mood disorders are the most common. Um, they're different. I'm sorry, I'm calling them mood disorders, and they're not mood disorders. The personality disorders. Personality disorders. They're the most common. Okay? So, how do you decide as a therapist? Say somebody comes in and um, they want you to check them out. And I say, "What's wrong with me, doc?" So we have this book that we use, and I'll put it up here and show it to you. I hope you can see it. It's called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's what everybody uses in the industry to look at a person's symptoms and see if they can come up with some sort of a diagnosis. Okay. So it's kind of detailed, but just grabbing a page right open, you'll see that this page, let me line that up correctly. This page relates to obsessive compulsive and related disorders. So if you come up, you'll see, and you won't be able to read it too well, I don't think, but it shows you all these criteria that a person has to meet in order to be diagnosed obsessive compulsive. And so there are a lot of criteria for this particular disorder. Um, you define the obsession, and then the compulsions are defined. Okay, so what people don't realize is that obsessive compulsive disorder actually consists of two elements. When someone says they have an obsession, that's all they're saying is it's something they think about all the time. Just constantly thinking about something. That's an obsession. You're obsessed with an idea of something. Okay. Now, the compulsion piece is where you actually act out what you're thinking about. Okay. So you obsess and then you act on that obsession. That then starts to meet the criteria for obsessive compulsive disorder. Okay. Take one or the other out, and it's no longer obsessive compulsive. At one time, addiction was considered to be an obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, they changed that a while back, but the obsession, of course, was, let's say, with alcohol, the obsession is you're always thinking about drinking, and the compulsion is you do it, you drink. Okay. So there are other criteria to meet that diagnosis. But what um, I want to back up just a little bit, okay, and say, especially with the personality disorders, um, there are degrees. Everything is in degrees. Okay, that's why I put what. That's why I labeled this talk tonight. Um, that we're all a little bit crazy, right? So one of the common uh, jokes in the mental health field is that if you pick up this DSM and you start reading the definitions and the criteria that have to be met for a diagnosis, any kind of diagnosis, anxiety, depression, mood, personality disorders, there's a million personality disorders, but we've all got little bits and pieces of all those things, little bits. So some people will say, "Oh my God, I started reading this book and I started going crazy. I'm thinking, everything I'm reading is wrong with me. That's me." Well, the reason you think that is because we all have little baby traits of these things. Okay, but it doesn't. It has to rise to a certain level of severity before we're going to call it a disorder. Okay. So everybody at at some point in time has been a little depressed. Everybody. I don't know anybody who hasn't had some depression, some days or half days or whatever. But just because you're depressed once in a blue moon, um, and it doesn't really interfere with your functioning and how you get along in life, how you do. As long as it's not really interfering and it's not too frequent, we're not going to call that a disorder. That's just being human. Same with anxiety. Everybody has a little anxiety from time to time, especially in this day and age. But unless the anxiety is just real prevalent and it's just there all the time, and uh, it's really starting to affect how you live your life and the quality of your life. Other people can see your anxiety. Unless it reaches those levels, we don't give you a diagnosis. We don't say that. What you might say is that he has a little piece, a little taste, a little bit of anxiety there, little taste of this, little taste of that, but nothing that rises to the level of severity that would warrant a diagnosis. Okay, so if you accept the notion that in order to have a diagnosis of a disorder, you have to meet certain criteria. Well, most people don't. Most people don't reach those levels. So if you don't have a diagnosis, but even if you did, let's say you had a diagnosis of depressive disorder or anxiety disorder, um, what does that say about you? What does that mean for you? Okay, what does it mean? Well, a lot of people have anxiety, and a lot of people have rise to the love disorders. But does that mean um, just because you have depression, does that mean you're crazy? Crazy? No, of course not. But number one, in the profession of mental health, there is no such thing as crazy. There's no diagnosis that says he's diagnosed crazy. No, that's just slang. Okay, it's a slang term people use just to say somebody's a little odd or different. It's, oh, he's crazy. Well, it's not a real thing. Okay, so you can be depressed. You can have some depression, mild depression, some mild anxiety, any number of different things, and you would still be considered normal. Most people are normal, even though they have some kind of little bits and pieces of disorders. You're still normal because everybody's like that. Okay, so what do you think constitutes good mental health? There's, I don't know, three or four real main characteristics of a person that you would typically say has good mental health. All right. So, one of those characteristics would be that the person you're talking about um, has a very clear understanding and picture of who they are as a person. If I asked you to describe to me who are you? Tell me about yourself. What are your characteristics? What are the things about you that you like and you don't like? What are some of your habits? Blah blah, on and on and on, blah blah blah. If I can give you a very realistic and accurate description of myself, well, that's considered to be pretty good mental health. And it's particularly if the other person knows you and they agree. They say, yeah, I agree with what you're saying about yourself. That sounds very, very accurate. I would say that's you. Okay. If you have that clarity about who you are, then you probably have pretty good mental health. Okay. Now that's not to say that you don't have some little disorders. You could be depressed and say to yourself, I'm I'm aware that I'm depressed. I have depressed days, and some days are just harder than others. Hard to get out of bed, um, hard to function really. But it's not like that all the time. Most days I'm in pretty good shape. And if I know you and I say, yeah, I agree with that. I can tell sometimes you're depressed, but for the most part, you're not. For the most part, you're pretty healthy and pretty happy. Um, if I can see myself accurately, then I probably have fairly good mental health. Okay. So another aspect of mental health might be that you would say um, most days, not all days, but most days, I feel pretty happy. I feel pretty content. Okay. That's a pretty clear indication that you're doing something right. Okay. And I like to use the word content rather than happy because everybody's trying to be happy, right? But it's so hard. You just happiness is just a state of mind that you kind of pass through. It's like going, it's like driving down a country road and there's a stoplight and you stop for a second and you're happy and then the light turns green and you go and you're no longer happy. It's just fleeting. It comes and goes. Okay. You can't, you can't count on being happy every day. Okay. But you can, it is realistic to say to yourself, um, I may not be happy all the time, but I am content. I feel content. I don't feel like there's some hole inside of me that I can't fill. I don't feel like I'm missing out on life. I feel grateful for what I have. Maybe I don't have a whole lot, but I'm grateful for what I have. And I'm not feeling like I'm less than somebody else just because I don't have a brand new car or big house or what, maybe my clothes are kind of old and that's fine. I'm just grateful that I have clothes. For the most part, most days I'm content. I don't feel restless. I don't feel like there's something missing. Everything's okay. Even though I know I have my own little problems, I accept that and I'm okay with it. All right. I'm okay with it. I feel content. So there's a couple of criteria you could use, I think. You could say part of part of the criteria for having good mental health would be to say that you have an accurate picture of who you are. You can describe yourself accurately, and most people would agree. So some people have characteristics, especially when you get into the personality disorders. Um, some people have characteristics about themselves that they don't see. They don't recognize that they can be selfish, that they're a little nasty, maybe a little petty. They don't see that. They think the rest of the world is like that, but not me. So they don't necessarily, and I'm sure you all know people who have little quirks about them that are not real nice, and they don't even know they've got them. Okay, narcissists particularly are like that. A narcissist, in order to be considered a narcissist, you have to meet certain criteria, and that falls under the heading I mentioned earlier about personality disorders. A narcissist is a person who has a personality disorder. And some of the characteristics of a narcissist are that they have to always be right, that they cannot tolerate somebody contradicting them. Okay? They have to be correct about everything. So they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. They don't have really a whole lot of empathy for other people. A typical narcissist, when you meet a narcissist for the first time, they're going to probably be real upbeat and happy-go-lucky and so glad to meet you. And they're going to have this personality that shines. And especially if for guys who are predators, they're looking for young ladies to try to take advantage of. They'll be real charming and nice and complimentary and just talk and do stuff to make the other person really love them or care about them or think that they care about them, okay, so that they can take advantage of them. Then after the narcissist has gotten what they want and they start to get anxious or restless, they change. They start to isolate you from your friends so that they can control you. So what appeared to be genuine concern for you initially morphs over time into control. I don't want you going out with those girls. I don't want you hanging out with them because they're not good for you. do this and they do that. You need to just stay home with me. I can go out, but you can't. You have to stay home, okay? Because that's in your best interest. So they start to split you from other people that you know. And all of this can be real subtle. You might not see it happening at first. It's a classic reason why our parents told us, hopefully they told us, um, that it's real important to go slow when you meet somebody of the opposite, or well, I shouldn't say the opposite sex, but somebody who you might be romantically interested in and want to develop a relationship. You need to go slow because everybody is on their best behavior at first. And what you see in a person in the first few weeks or months of a relationship may not be who they really are. It may be a facade, it's a front, it's something they want you to see, but they know deep down inside they're not letting you really see the real them. Okay? And so after they've kind of separated you from all your friends and your family and all that, and you're kind of all alone, and don't have anywhere to go, then the real personality starts to come out, and you find out this person is not what I thought they were at all. And now I'm in trouble. I can't get away from this person. So it's some people, I'm really going off on a tangent here talking about narcissists, but there's a lot of narcissists in this world. And we've all seen them, we've all met them, we all know them, but you don't necessarily know how to put a name on what you're seeing. You see something, you know it's not right, but you don't know what to call it. And so a lot of times with the guys, when they're kind of short tempered, they start out nice, real nice and friendly and full of jokes, and they're very polite and blah, 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 blah. And you think, oh, what a wonderful guy, or what a wonderful guy. More men are narcissists than women, a lot more. So you see that, and you know, and then they change and they have a real quick temper. They get mad real easy, especially when you disagree with them. They can't tolerate that. So you know something's wrong, but you don't know what to call it. Well, you're probably not going to be too far off if you say this person's a narcissist. Okay. And if you feel like you're tangled up with one, um, my advice is to find a way out as fast as you can because it's not going to be nice. You want to get away from them as fast as you can. So, what else is there? There are what we call cultural norms. Certain types of behavior are considered appropriate and okay in certain cultures. If you go to some country in Europe, um, people may, let's say, burping. Okay, I'm not sure which country. Maybe it's Italy. If it's not, I'm sorry. I apologize. But in some countries, if you eat a meal, it's perfectly okay to go and burp afterwards, right? Burp out loud, and they consider that a compliment. That's good. That means um, you really enjoyed your meal. Okay, that doesn't that doesn't say anything negative about you in that setting. Okay, now you come to America and you do the same thing, and people are going to look at you and say, "What is wrong with him? This guy doesn't have any manners. He's not right." So a lot of our behaviors are considered normal or abnormal based on the culture you're in and how people are raised in that culture. So um, I guess what would be another good way to describe that? What's normal and what isn't? It all depends on cultural expectations. Okay, and a person who has no awareness of what's expected, their cultural expectations are, if they don't have any awareness of the culture they're in and what's expected, then that's a pretty big red flag that they have something that's not right. Okay. Quite often, folks who are autistic, who are severely autistic, um, they don't have the ability to read a face. Okay. You know how most people, if I'm angry, I make a face and you look at it and you say, uh-oh, I know what that face means. That guy's angry. Well, a person who is severely autistic doesn't have that ability. That face doesn't mean anything to them. They can't read anything into it. Okay. So if you're happy or you're sad or you're angry or whatever it is, your tone of voice changes, your volume gets higher, you make facial expressions and all that. If someone is severely autistic, that doesn't mean anything to them. They don't know how to interpret it. They don't know what it means. Okay. So they are looked at, they respond in ways that are what most people would say are not appropriate. It's just not an appropriate response. If somebody's crying and you don't know what that means and you start laughing because you don't know any better, well, people are going to look at you and say, man, something's wrong with that guy. He's not right. And of course, the problem is he may be autistic and not know it. Okay? He might not, well, probably if it's severe, somebody would know and they'd be onto it. But people who don't know him might not know. Okay? So, cultural norms, a healthy, accurate image of who you are as a person. Those are a couple of them. I know I touched on another one, but what about what about self-esteem? Where do you think self-esteem fits into all of that? Um, what how a person feels about themselves. That self-image, my value, how I value myself. How much value do I give to myself? That's a big, big determinant of what kind of mental health that person's going to have. Okay, people who have very low self-esteem, who you've got to think about the words that we use. Self-esteem. In other words, how do I esteem or value myself? What value do I place on me as a person? If I think I'm a good person, I have flaws and I accept my flaws, I know they're there, but I try to be as good a person as I possibly can. I try to be polite to others. I try to have empathy for others, and I do. When someone else is hurting, I feel for them because I've hurt and I can relate to them. See, a narcissist can't do that, but a person who has healthy self-esteem will be able to, and they may want to be helpful to another person. They think a person with healthy self-esteem believes that they deserve to be treated nicely. Okay? Maybe not like a queen or a king all the time, but they deserve to be treated with respect. They deserve to be treated honestly and have people understand what their needs and desires are and try to fulfill them. And those people basically, we were talking earlier about contentment, those people basically feel pretty content with life for the most part. Now, a person who does not have healthy self-esteem, who questions their value as a person, they don't value themselves very highly. They don't think they're worth very much. And so that's painful. It's painful to think that you don't add up. You're not um, as good as other people. Okay, you just don't add up. You're somehow broken. You're not lovable. You are a little slow. You're not very smart. You're ugly. You're incompetent. You don't know how to get things done. And basically, people just don't want much to do with you, especially if they knew who you really were. Right? If they really knew who you were, they wouldn't want to be around you. So you have to go to great lengths to cover all those things up. You don't want people to see your flaws because if they saw them, they would leave you. They would abandon you. They would not want to have a relationship with you. They would call you stupid and ugly and unlovable. And that's exceedingly painful. So you cover it up. And the number one way to cover up low self esteem is through perfectionism. People who are very driven to be perfect, you can just about guarantee that that person has some self-esteem issues. Nothing they're willing to talk about in public. In some cases, they might not even know it. Okay, they just know that, and this is another very very big driver for anxiety and depression. People who have low self-esteem tend to be very anxious people and tend to towards depression. Anxiety and depression are very similar. They're kissing cousins, really. So if you are keeping a secret about yourself and you don't want anybody to know this secret, um, you are going to create a world in your head that is just full of anxiety provoking thoughts. Lots of key words like you might say to yourself, what if? What if this happens? What if they find out about that? What if this goes wrong? What's going to happen then? What if, what if, what if? And your mind is free to speculate about anything you want, anything, you name it. It's what if. It's opens the door to a very active imagination. Okay. So when I think about the future and all I come up with is, what if I grow old and die all alone? Oh my God. That's just that's just pure imagination going. It's you don't have any reason to believe that's really going to happen. And it's certainly not going to happen today. So why are you making yourself afraid? That's anxiety because you deep down inside suspect that since you have such low worth, such low value, people won't want to be with you when you get old. They're going to abandon you and you might die all alone. But it's all up here. It's all in your imagination. None of it is true. But you think it might be, and that causes you to be anxious. Okay. So people come to therapy because they are very anxious, and their anxieties are always based on future thinking about what might happen at some point in the future. Um, and you can't know what it is, so you can't control it, and it makes you scared, makes you anxious. And it's all based, like I said, it's all based on low self esteem. A person who feels very confident about themselves, they don't really worry much about the future. They have a history of being successful, they have a history of having friends, being in stable relationships, stable employment. They don't worry about the future because they expect it's going to be okay because it all has been up until now. So self-esteem again is a core issue from in mental health, particularly with mood disorders and a lot of personality disorders. Okay. Um, I was thinking, now all of a sudden I'm going blank. There was something I wanted to mention. Let me look at some of your uh, chats here and see if any of you have any questions. Uh, let's see. In the past, I have behaved quite toxically in terms of wishing in my heart the worst for people who have tried or I thought had tried to hurt me on purpose, but 10 times worse than the harm. Okay? 10 times worse than the harm they have done or tried to do to me. What kind of person would you consider to fit that kind of behavior? Well, that's an interesting question. And this is from uh, Pavlo, Pavlo 52. I hope I said that correctly. Um, so I have behaved quite toxically in terms of wishing in my heart the worst for people who have tried or I thought had tried to hurt me on purpose, but 10 times worse than the harm they have done or tried to do to me. Hmm, that's an interesting question. Very interesting. If I understand you accurately, you're questioning the type of person you are because you have held resentments towards people and wished them ill will because in your mind they have tried to hurt you, deliberately tried to hurt you, and it sounds like you're not positive that that's the case, but you suspect they tried to hurt you on purpose. And now you're starting to realize that feeling that you hold, that wish for ill will, um, has actually hurt you 10 times worse than what's been done or what they tried to do to you. Um, you know what kind of person that is? That's a real common kind of person. And I don't mean that negatively at all. I mean, it's real typical in a lot of ways. It's typical to carry resentments against people who you feel like have really harmed you. The problem is carrying a resentment is the best way that I heard it explained, and it sounds like you've already understood that. Um, you're saying that you drink the poison, which is the resentment. You drink the poison and you expect them to get sick. But that's not the way it works, is it? You drink the poison and you get sick. In the meantime, the people who you think have harmed you are oblivious. They don't know anything about what you're talking about. Probably, probably. Now, maybe some people did deliberately try to hurt you, okay? Now, those people, obviously, you want to stay as far away from them as you can in the future going forward. You don't need to put yourself around people who are going to deliberately try to hurt you. Just don't need that. Um, Someone is responding to you right now, just Lindsay. The fact you see that behavior as toxic, I believe, speaks volumes about your character, more solid than you probably give yourself credit for. Amen. Amen, just Lindsay. You just said it as well as I could possibly say it. The fact that you have the awareness says that you're okay, right? You might be a little on the sensitive side, maybe. I don't know. A lot of creative, artistic people can tend to be a little sensitive. Um, but at the bottom of all this, the bottom line is that you're talking about rather than harboring resentment and being angry all the time, um, and having all this negativity around you. What you need to learn how to do basically is to forgive. You have to learn how to forgive them for the harms they've caused you, and you have to learn how to forgive yourself for just being human, okay? Because we all make mistakes. Every one of us makes mistakes. People who have self esteem issues don't believe they can. They don't believe they're allowed to make mistakes. They fear that if they make too many mistakes, people will leave them and they'll be all alone. So they don't feel like they have the luxury of being able to make a mistake. So they have to deny they've made mistakes, or they have to try to cover them up in some fashion. Whereas a person who has good self esteem understands that it's perfectly okay to make mistakes because that's the way life is. We all make mistakes. If we didn't, we wouldn't be human. So if I understand that I'm imperfect, I make lots of mistakes. I get it. I do. I make a lot of mistakes. And I forgive myself for that because that's called being human. You can't resent yourself for being human. That doesn't make sense. So if I accept my shortcomings, it's a whole lot easier for me to look at you and say, I accept this person's got shortcomings as well. And sometimes their shortcomings make them say and do things that are hurtful to me. So I forgive them for what they've done. That does not mean I forget. I did not forget what you did to me. I've, but I forgive you. And going forward, there has to be a change. Either your behavior has to change, or I'm going to take myself away from this relationship, get away from you. But I forgive you for being human. Okay. Um, so that's where we have to learn how to set boundaries, let people know when their behavior is acceptable or it isn't. But what I would say to you, um, and Lindsay said it absolutely the best. Um, if you've had a resentment, just accept it. That's that's part of being human to resent and to be angry. But it's also a sign of your good mental health that you recognize it hurts you far more than it hurts them. So that's why I say you're just a normal person. You're just normal like the rest of us, trying to do the best you can. Okay. All right, let's see what else we have here. From Sarah. Sarah, I have this type of people in situations when I worked in the army for 3 years. They are so negative and then want to make your life bad and toxic. Then they are happy and good with their lives. Well, that's right. That's right, isn't it? That's what unhappy people do. They don't want other people to be happy because they're not happy. And so they feel as though the only way they can feel better is if they make other people as miserable as they are. And it's a very toxic way of thinking. And again, it's not always possible, especially in a work environment, but you have to do the best you can to create boundaries around people like that. They're very toxic, and toxicity, anger, um, that type of negativity, criticism of other people, that's very corrosive and it can seep into your life as well. It's very difficult to stay upbeat and happy when you're surrounded by people who are not, and people who are not interested in your well being. They just want you to be as miserable as them. So, what did you say here? 3 years you were in that negative environment. and then they are happy and good with their lives. Well, you know what? Think about this. All of you, think about this for a second. Why do you think people like to gossip? Why do we get together in groups, two or three people, and we'll start talking about somebody who's not there at the time? And what do? We start putting them down. We talk about how they're not very smart, or they don't dress very well, or they're this, that, or the other thing, whatever, some negative thing. Why do we do that? Why do we gossip negatively about other people? Anybody got an idea why we would do that? Well, let's see what you have to say. Oh, hi, Mohammed. Good to see. Because they feel good putting someone else beneath them to not feel they are the worst. Absolutely. It's how I make myself feel better about me. You hit the nail on the head, Mohammed. As long as I can convince myself there are other people who are worse off than me, then I must be okay. And that's the sole reason we gossip. We cluck. Oh, we do all that stuff just so we'll feel better about ourselves. And it's not nice, really, certainly not nice. So that's exactly why we do it. Let's see here. Erebus Beyond, my family is like that. I try to have an in-depth conversation and they just give me one-worded answers. Yeah. Well, maybe they don't know how to answer, you know? Maybe they don't have the insights, the self-knowledge, or maybe they're just not able to. In Serbia, we say when someone gossips that this gossips are like food for them. The gossips are like food for them. Yeah, right, exactly. That's right. Are you in Serbia, Sarah? I guess you are, Sarah Gurley. Very interesting. Yeah. Thank you for all your input. Very nice. By the way, let me mention this now. Just say it and move on. Um, there's an excellent book by an author. Uh, his name is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's Gabor Mate. And he's a physician. He's written several books that are on the New York Times bestseller list. He has a book out now called The Myth of Health. And yeah, I think it's The Myth of Health. And it's all about the myths that we believe around mental health. And it's from what I've read, now I haven't read the whole book for sure. It's very interesting and it's really on right on time for what we're talking about tonight. What is mental health? Everything is relative, okay? So I put a link to that book in the description on this live chat. If you should be interested in reading it, you can go and click on the link and it'll take you right to the book, okay? So I'm going to try to do that. I would like to be able to offer folks things that coincide and add to these discussions. And this book really seems to hit the nail on the head. So feel free to check it out. I was thinking about this idea of mental health and the notion that I said earlier that you have to meet all this criteria and it has to be sufficiently severe in order to warrant a diagnosis. So one thing that's true, and again, keep in mind that we all have certain traits of just about all these things, some more than others. Okay? But if you start at one end of a scale. Let's say you start at zero, which means you don't have any issues. You don't have any anxiety or depression or whatever. Now, number one, that's impossible. I'm just using it as an example. But you're at the perfect end of the scale, all right? But then you start moving along that scale. And after you get to about 20 or 30, you start to feel a little, every now and then, just a little off your game, not so good. Then you keep moving on the scale, and now you're at about 50. And at 50, you know that there are days where you're not feeling good. You're anxious, you're irritable, snap at people, you're depressed, you don't have any energy, but you're still not at a point where you would warrant a diagnosis. You don't feel 100%, but you're not ready to be diagnosed. Then you move some more. You move more down the scale. Now you're approaching 80, 90. And yeah, it's time to say you have a mental health condition. So what does all that mean? What that means is that we all live our lives somewhere between those two. There's zero over here and 100 over here, and most of us are somewhere in here. And that can fluctuate from day to day to day. And believe it or not, that's where you want to be. That's normal. That's good health. If somebody was 100% happy all the time, what would we think? We'd think they'd gone around the bend, man. They're crazy. Nobody's 100% happy all the time. Nobody. And if somebody's really miserable all the time, we would think, man, something's wrong with them too. So you don't want to be on the extreme ends of anything. You really are hoping to be somewhere in the middle, and that middle can move and fluctuate. So basically, if you are content with yourself for the most part, you see that there's room for improvement, you recognize it, but you're okay with you and you think people like you as you are, then you are exactly where you need to be. That's where you want to stay, right? And there's a lot more ways to think about that. Let's see what else you have to say here, Mohammed. Some family members just shut off because they never got used to express themselves. Maybe they just don't know how to make a conversation. You're absolutely right, Mohammed. That's probably exactly right. It may be that they were told when they were younger not to show their feelings, not to talk about how they really feel. They were taught not to trust other people, and that it's not okay, especially for men. This is much more so than for women. Men are taught to be strong, to not have soft spot, sensitivity. They're not. That's not good. Then that's not allowed. You're not allowed to be sensitive. You're not allowed to get your feelings hurt. So you're taught to keep all that bottled up and pretend like it's not there. Of course, that doesn't work, but that's what you're taught. So if you're taught that it's not okay to be sad, it's not okay to have empathy for someone else. If you're taught that if you express those things, people are going to look down on you, you're going to learn real fast to keep quiet. You're not going to talk about these things. And when you get around people who do, it's going to make them real uncomfortable, very uncomfortable to hear somebody else talking about these things, especially if it's a man. So you've got to understand that. Your family just may not be emotionally equipped to handle those types of conversations. And you need to just really kind of dial it back a little bit with them and understand everybody, everybody's doing the best they can, even if it's not very good. They're still doing the best they can. Okay. I don't think it's bad to be negative sometimes, but your mom is totally right about that. We can't change people if they don't decide themselves to change. Boy, isn't that the truth? Boy, you guys are doing a good job of, this is the way group therapy works, and you guys are doing exactly that. We're having kind of an impromptu group therapy session here. That's great. I love to see people talking back and forth and offering their wisdom and advice to each other, especially when it comes from a place of personal experience. Yeah, that's right, Sarah girl. Very good. Very good. Well, look, do you guys have any suggestions for any topics for next week that you might like to have me bring up, talk about? There's a million things we could address in much more detail than what I've talked about tonight. Um, any suggestions for possible videos? Anything you'd like to see or hear about that I might be able? Nostalgia. Okay, Sergio. Nostalgia. What are we? What? Give me a little more about that. What are we talking about? Nostalgia. I mean, I know what that means to me, but do you want me to talk about nostalgia, about what it is and what it means, or explain what it is? I don't know. What would you like? Okay. Mohammed, you're saying I'm new here to know the exact way this channel is heading to. Uh, okay. Well, I don't know how to respond to that exactly, Mohammed. We're kind of free forming it here, okay? It doesn't have, I mean, my idea originally was to talk about mental health issues, and we can certainly, and that covers a lot of ground, okay? So if you have other topics you'd like to bring up, that's fine too. It's not really my chat, it's your chat, okay? So whatever you want is fine. Let me get back to Sergio here for a second. I was asking about the nostalgia, so now I got to run back here a little bit, Sergio, and find your original post. Here, there you go. I am so nostalgic. Because of that, I usually have too much anxiety, and it makes me sad. I don't know how to not be nostalgic. I feel like I'm not living right like this. Okay. Um, there's a form of, you say you have too much anxiety. Well, there's a form, a term they use called dysphoria, and what it means is that it's like a very, very, very low level of anxiety. Not anxiety, depression. Low level depression is dysphoric. He's not super depressed. You're able to get up and go about your day, do your business, but you're not really very happy. You're just not happy ever. Just never very happy. Just kind of low level depressed. Um, Nostalgia is usually a word that I associate with thinking about the past. Okay. I'm nostalgic for the good old days. I want my, I yearn, I long for something in the past, a mood, an event, some kind of feeling, some kind of a relationship that I might have had with someone, something that was taken from me prematurely, unexpectedly, and I would long for it. I want it back. That's what I usually think of when I hear the term nostalgia. Um, and there is a very, it's interesting. Let me get back up to your more recent post here. Uh, I don't see it right now, but we'll talk about that because it's an interesting choice of words, nostalgia. It's this is mental health. People in the profession know this. There are two modes of thinking that create a mood for us. Okay, so if I tend to spend most of my time thinking about the future, wondering what's going to happen. And that future can be 5 minutes from now or 5 years from now. It doesn't matter if it's in the future. And I spend too much time thinking about what's going to happen to me in the future. If I do that, it's going to create anxiety in my mind. 99.9% of all anxiety comes from thinking about the future. And the reason for that is that we can't know the future. It's obviously, you can't know the future. So if you can't know something, you can't really prepare for it. There's no way to control something that you don't even know. So that, and there is nothing in the world that makes humans more uncomfortable than feeling like life is out of control. And I'm sure you can relate to that. I'm sure all of you can. You'll hear people say that, oh, it's just a wreck. Life just feels so out of control right now. Well, people don't like that. People do not like to feel out of control. So if I'm thinking about the future, I'm creating anxiety in my own head. And it's not real. It's just a thought. It's what we think. Now, what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is thinking about the past. If I spend my days, all my waking time, thinking about things from the past, whatever it might be, events, people, misfortunes, missed opportunities, bad things that happened to me, things that I regret that I wish had never happened, things I wish I could do over and I'll never be able to, people I've lost. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you spend too much of your time thinking about the past, you're going to become depressed. And the degree of depression, the intensity of the depression, um, might be, if it's not too deep, but if it's there, you might call that nostalgia. Okay? Um, Nostalgic for the good old days. Nothing seems as good today as it did in the past. We were much better off in the past. I miss it. I'm nostalgic. Okay? So I don't know if that resonates with you or not. I hope it does. I hope that kind of addresses what you're talking about. Nostalgia doesn't always have to be a bad thing. I mean, you can have pleasant nostalgia as well. But more often than not, when we spend too much time in our past, in our head, in our past, we are going to become depressed. So if that doesn't work for you, please let me know, and I'll be happy to uh, expand on that. Yeah. Okay. Just Lindsay, you're saying the exact same thing, right? Yeah. Okay. Very good, Lindsay. Just Lindsay. Very good. Sergio, I'm worried that if I'm like this at 22 years old, when I get older, I'm not going to be able to control this feeling. I feel like I'm never happy or satisfied. Okay. So what you just wrote in that chat is a perfect example of what I was talking about when I said we create our anxiety by thinking about the future. So read the words. I'm worried, anxious, that if I'm like this at 22, when I get older, I'm not going to be able to control this feeling. Pure speculation. I'm not discounting it, okay? It's real. It's real for you, absolutely. But the point is you're worrying about something in the future. Okay? And that is something you have no control over whatsoever. You cannot control the future. You don't know what the future holds. The only place, think about this now, you got to take a minute to wrap your head around this. The only place where there's peace and calm and serenity is right here, right now. This instant. Your life is in no danger. The things that you worry about are not happening right now. The past is gone. The future's not here. The only thing that's real, the only reality is what's happening right this instant. This is it. This is all that really is. Okay? So if you want to have a happy, contented life, make sure all of your right nows are lived to the best of your ability. And you just put one in front of the other, in front of the other, and you just build on your life that way. The only thing you can control, the only thing that you can manage or influence are the choices that you make for right now. This is it. Okay. So you're 22 years old. You've got a lot of time to work this all out. Okay. You really do. Certain amount of anxiety, especially at your age, is pretty normal. 22-year-olds. I don't know where you live, Sergio, but in the United States, in this day and age, a lot of 22-year-olds are very unsettled. They don't know what they're going to do for a living, for work. They don't really see, and again, this is thinking into the future, but they don't seem to be very optimistic. You're from Portugal, and it's 1 a.m., and you're helping me stay calm. Well, that's good, man. That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad. There are a lot of things that you can read on your own to help you deal with your anxiety. I don't know how much you read, but there's a fantastic book. It's a classic. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it was written by a German psychiatrist who was Jewish, and he was in prison. He was in a concentration camp during the Second World War. His name was Viktor Frankl, and he spells it Viktor, Viktor Frankl. And he observed in the camps that a lot of the people were getting sick and dying. And some people were not. Some people were, I wouldn't say thriving, but they were doing okay. They were making it. So he started watching these people, and what he realized was that the people who seemed to stay in relatively good health and their spirits were relatively good, he would talk to them and ask them why. And what he learned was that all of these people, the common characteristic that they all had was that they believed there was something no one could ever take from them. You can take my clothes, you can take my freedom, you can take my health, you can put me behind barbed wire, you can take my life. But you can never, ever take my ability to make a choice. The ability to choose is one thing that distinguishes us from the animals. Okay, you can choose how you're going to feel. You may not understand that right now, but I'm telling you, you can make a choice to be happy, or you can make a choice to be anxious. Now, just because you make the choice doesn't mean you're going to flip a switch and be happy all the time. No, I'm not saying that. But you can say to yourself, I choose to the best of my ability to be happy today. And nobody can make me not be happy because I choose to be happy. It's my choice, it's mine. You own that. You own the ability to make a choice. Nobody can ever take that from you. And just how powerful is that? Think about that. You don't let the world dictate to you how you're going to feel. You choose how you're going to feel. Okay? So the people in the concentration camp who didn't understand that, they saw themselves as being victims. They didn't see that they had a choice. So they were being victimized. They felt helpless and hopeless, and that depression came over them, and they got physically ill and died. So it's real powerful stuff, Sergio. I'm telling you, it's very powerful stuff. The ability to make a choice and then learning how to do it is one of the most important things you can possibly do for yourself. Stay in today, work on what's in front of you today, and that's all, and make a choice. You're not gonna be a victim. You are gonna be the captain of your own ship. Okay? I hope that helps, man. All right, let's see what else we got here. Chicken sandwich or cheeseburger? Yeah, there you go. I'm currently 19. I've been in a community college for almost 2 years already. I was diagnosed with severe depression when I was 15. And whenever I fall back into it, I end up failing some classes. Okay. So let me ask you this. If you're 19, have you ever been in therapy for depression? If not, then my next question is, have you ever spoken to a medical professional about taking an antidepressant? Because if you're not taking an antidepressant, and there's no reasons for you not to, you might want to talk to your doctor about that. It could, your depression sounds like is what they call recurring. You'll be depressed for a while, then the depression lifts and you feel relatively normal. And then at some point in the future, the depression hits again and you sink back down. So it's hard to stay stable. You're up or you're down. An antidepressant, and I'm not prescribing, I'm not telling you to get one. I'm saying talk to a doctor about an antidepressant. It's not something you have to necessarily want to. It's nothing you have to take your whole life. Just take it while you need it and see if it works for you. It can level out your mood so you don't have those dips. It can make a big difference. Okay. So talk to your doctor. Okay. Let's see. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm going to search that book. Good, Sergio. All right. I've been loving your content lately. Super happy to have caught this live stream. Thank you, Chayuyu. All right. Well, guys, look, it's starting to get past my bedtime. I know a lot of you are in Europe, and it must be very late over there. Again, great conversation, man. I just love being able to interact with you guys, and I love being able to see you guys interact with each other. And that's kind of like one way to build community, isn't it? You don't know each other, never seen each other, but the more you talk, the more you find out you're just like each other. And that's a wonderful thing. That's something that helps to break the loneliness, a sense of connection to other people and sharing your hard times and your good times, and them sharing their hard times and good times with you gives you a sense of belonging. And that's crucial to feel like you fit in and belong somewhere. Okay. That's great. Great stuff. Okay. Guys, look, I'm going to have to go now. I've enjoyed it. I'm going to come up with some kind of a topic and put it out for next Thursday. I really enjoy doing these things. So as long as y'all keep showing up, I'm going to keep showing up. All right, y'all. Have a nice week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.